Hello, I'm back. Hopefully I'll be the right way round now. So a quick recap. We're talking about time in the month of November. So the invitation now is to take yourself through the clarity process, ask questions about time, be curious with each other. So that's the C, big curiosity. Be playful about this now. Start noticing what you're telling yourself, what words are you using around language. If you hear other people saying things about time, ask them a question, what kind of, is there anything else about that? So the other L, thing about language. So I was just saying, Gavin, before you came on and Steve was there, we were talking about how I'm becoming curious as I look at time this week. Fab. I'm glad you can see me the right way around. Looking at things that, like we say, I don't have space in my diary. So like, sometimes it's not literally minutes and hours and years, but just being curious. You know, I'm early, I'm running late, I'm never on time. Just be curious of any language or words that you're using in your dialogue with yourself or other people around time this month. So that's where we want to put our attention for the month, just to be curious about time. And what we're on to A, attention. I was just reminding people that time can be our past, our present and our future. So one of the things I did on this journey is I started noticing that I was talking about something in the present tense with it was actually a past tense experience. So I might have said, I'm a chocoholic, for example. Well, actually, I used to be a chocoholic is a more accurate description. So just be aware of your tenses. Notice when you're talking in present tense, past tense or future tense. Notice where your attention is, because it might be that some of your overwhelm comes because you're talking about something that's a past experience in the present tense still. Or it could be that you're talking about something that's a future. So, you know, the good thing about goal setting is it gives you something to work towards. But the bad side about goal setting is that it always talks about it in the future. So, you know, one day I want to be happy. Whereas if we're talking about I am happy versus I want to be happy in the future tense, it can cause some of the overwhelm. It can cause the critic to be unsettled. So just be curious this month about what you're saying to yourself, particularly if it's causing you any anxiety or stress or overwhelm and you feel like you don't have enough time. Be noticing whether or not you are communicating with yourself and others accurately. Because it may be that, you know, it's, for example, if you're talking about, they talk about positive affirmations, about making present tense and making them personal to you. So I am happy rather than I want to be happy, which is a future tense, something you're going to have eventually, but you haven't got right now. That's about attention. Reflection. Everybody around us is a mirror, is an opportunity for us to get feedback. So if you hear or see somebody doing time really well, it's your opportunity to ask questions of them. Be curious about them. People often say to me, you get so much done, how do you do that? And if you want to know how I do it, then please ask questions of me. I do start every day with questions in the group, but this is about the community now starting to really ask questions of each other. I'm always happy to be curious about my own processes and how I do things, but also do this of each other, find out from each other. If you find yourself noticing or complaining about friends or family that are not doing time very well, be curious about it and just think about the advice that you're suggesting they should be doing, and just take it in and make sure that it's not something you should be doing. One of the things I talk about in the book is mirror, mirror. People often will be displaying behaviour and we can be very critical of them because it's outside and it feels detached from us. And often it can be that it's actually a behaviour that we have and we're not consciously aware that we do it. Or it could be that it's a behaviour we wish we had. So there could be a bit of envy or jealousy going on because we admire it in the other person and we may criticise it, but it's actually because we wish we could. So some examples I had, you know, with parents really complaining about their children lazing around. You know, they just laze around, they just watch telly all day, they don't do anything. And actually, usually the big driver under that is that the parent wishes they could rest more. And actually, if they were taking more time off, they wouldn't resent other people resting and having time off. So it was more to do with the fact that they wanted to be able to rest. And so what would happen is they'd be criticising them, say they should be doing more, because then that makes it okay for them to be doing as much as they are, when actually what they want is to be doing a bit more of the other person. So reflections are really important, that if you find yourself praising or criticising other people, check in, because it might be you've praised somebody else with really good time management and maybe you actually are really good at time management too. So check with yourself, is it true, if not true, that you also do that, both the good and the not so good. And check if it's you're criticising somebody else or there's some envy, you know, what would need to happen for you to be like that? Or how could you ask them questions about how they do it so you could learn from them and adapt that for yourself? So that's reflection. Intention, this is about the drama. So when we get into survival brain, we lose the blood from our neocortex part of our brain, our clarity thinking brain. And so just notice when time is impacting you, when it's stopping you from thinking really, really clearly. For me, I noticed that towards the end of this charity thing, the charity challenge, as soon as I said I only had like 50 days or 53 days to lose 50 pounds, I started behaving really badly in terms of food. I was still eating very strictly, but I was really unhappy. I felt starving all the time, and it really wasn't going very well. So then I thought about how was I behaving at the beginning when I lost a stone in 6 weeks. And actually it's because I felt I had loads of time. I'd set myself a goal that an average of £1 a week, but it didn't have to be £1 every week. So some weeks it might be 2 or 3, and sometimes it might be £1 gain, but it'd be averaging £1. So because my brain was okay with I had plenty of time, my attitude towards my daily tasks was much kinder. I wasn't putting the pressure on myself. So as soon as I caught myself feeling a bit sort of in drama, resentful, victim, you know, persecutor mode to myself, oh, you're failing, you're useless, you haven't done this, you know, you're not losing weight. As soon as I catch myself in drama, that's an opportunity to stop and think about, how am I perceiving time? Is time supporting me to make things happen, or is it against me? Is it causing me to feel under pressure? And there is a fine line. I don't want to take the pressure off so much that I give up on the goal. I don't even do it. I just need to stretch that time perception enough so that I can feel comfortable with the goals I'm going for. So Gavin, you put, sometimes speaking about a goal in present tense, i.e. I'm happy, when I don't feel happy doesn't feel truthful. But I have found that changing it to something like I'm getting happier, or saying I could be happier, rather than I'm not peed off. Okay, I'll just see what I'm trying to work out. Put off meant. Yeah, so you're not peed off. Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's about, it's this internal calibration all the time, Gavin. It's catch yourself with the words, and it's just checking internally, is it working for you? Is it having that impact? And I was totally against affirmations. People go, you know, I am rich and wealthy, and you sit there doing your Zen thing, and I'd be thinking, what a load of twaddle. It just doesn't, you know, I'm not happy. So when I talk about attention, I also say about giving, in the context of time, I'm just saying be curious about it. But if it's about being truthful as well, because so it doesn't feel truthful. And I think that it's more the other side of it. If you say I'm unhappy, if your perception, the way you're speaking about it is I'm unhappy all of the time. This is where we talk about in the book the words like always and never. I'm never happy, I'm always unhappy. Then actually that's more to do with the fact that you're saying that all of the time you are that emotion. Whereas actually if you're saying in this moment I'm unhappy, and or I'm happier, then it basically what it's doing is from the perspective of time. And what I've noticed with clients, there's a shift that happens and it is about being truthful. If you are genuinely unhappy all of the time, saying I'm happy is not going to have any positive impact. It's not going to cause clarity, it's not going to give confidence, it's not going to do anything like that. But it's more about being truthful with yourself, because we are often saying things that are not the truth. They're generalizations, they're encapsulating all time when it's not true. So, you know, I'm unhappy now means that in this moment you are unhappy, and that's it. And in a moment I'll be happier, and if I was happy it will be like what? So it's consciously being aware of that. But in terms of attention, what I really want people to be curious about in the next few weeks when we talk about time is, are you saying what is actually true, or are you expanding it? Because sometimes when we get into story mode about time, we can make it much worse for ourselves than it really is. A client I was working with yesterday, I was sort of saying to her, what would be happening if it's working? She said, I don't know. And actually we had to sit there for a good sort of 30 seconds. So, and allow that time so that the information would start to seep through. And we did have to come at it from a different perspective. We'd ask, you know, what would you tell someone else to do? She's a teacher, so we would talk about what we would teach other people to do and how would she teach them to do it. And so she did have an awareness of it, but she wasn't giving herself enough time. So that's the intention behind it. Absolutely. Don't say things that are not true, but keep that statement. Don't say things that are not true is really the conclusion I'm trying to get to there, Gavin. And that's where it brings into the intention, is that we can get into victim mode of, well, I've never got any time and I've not got this, or, you know, those people are taking my time. And actually just check in, is that true? Is that really truthful? And if you are, you know, get much clearer about how much time are they taking, and how much time would you like, and how much time do you actually have? What is working? As we talk about what's working Wednesdays, is think about when you have got the time, what works. And the reason why the intention part is really important to pay attention to, I'm reading a book called Time Warped by Claudia Hammond at the moment. And I've always known it, but she's given some stories about how basically when we're fearful, so when we go into flight, fight or freeze, time slows down and time freezes. So, you know, when you have an hour, and I've noticed that when I do yoga, the yoga teachers never have clocks around. So you never know how much time you've got left. So you're literally just in the moment and you're having to trust that it comes to the end. Where I go circuit training, there used to be a clock on the wall and I'd be watching every 5 minutes, because it was uncomfortable and it was painful. And so it felt like those 5 minutes were just taking forever to go round to do my hour exercise. Whereas because I can't see the time in yoga, I have to be present in the moment and just experience the stretch as it is then. And I have no way of measuring when time will be up, other than when she says we're going to do the relaxation bit. I kind of know we're about 10 minutes from the end. So when we're in fight, flight or freeze, we're in survival mode, our brain is panicking or worrying about stuff, time slows down. A good story that Claudia gives is a skydiver who's coming down and his chute won't open. And basically there's a dialogue of what he goes through, thinking, well, I need to do this, I've got to do that, can I get in the trees, can I do that? And he's got a whole conversation going on with himself. And when he relays the conversation, but when they check the actual gadgets or how they're measuring it, that conversation only took 5 seconds, because he literally had 10 seconds to make a decision. When I do a lot of the work, if we work with clients who've had trauma, what the brain does is we call it T-1, but just 1 second or 1 minute before the trauma, the brain freezes time. And what can happen is that, so an example that David Grove gave was of a young child who was in a car, it was 30 miles an hour, and the door opens and they fly out, it's time before seatbelts, they fly out across, and they keep having a reoccurring dream of this door opening and falling out. And of course it freezes there. And the brain stops them from remembering that they hit the ground and any pain or anything that goes on. So it freezes. It's really clever at freezing time so that you don't relive and experience the pain. But what it can do at that point is keep reliving the bit just before the pain. And so a lot of the work I do with clean language isn't about reliving the pain. What we do is we call it T+1. So we take it to a minute past the trauma to remind the brain that you survived and you're okay. You're here today and you're alive. But the brain's got a really clever mechanism for freezing time when we're in danger. And so that can often make us feel like we haven't got enough time. So that's where the intention part's really important. That brings us on to the T for trust. And it's about trusting your own process and also taking your own advice. So pay attention to how you do time at your best. When you feel like you've got all the time in the world and you feel present and you feel happy and you're confident and you've got clarity, pay attention to what's happening, what's working, what happened just before that, what is the process, what is the environment and the systems that you require in place for that to happen. One of the best things I've done this year, and I thank Steve because it was about 3 years ago, no, 2 years ago, I was sat in my first Think Big meeting and he suggested doing CRM systems, and I was like, yeah. And actually what I was saying to myself was, I can't afford to pay anything else. You know, my little critic was going, oh, I can't do that. I so wish I got the CRM system earlier, because now I can always see my task list and I can see what I'm doing. My mind is much clearer and I'm really aware of what I'm doing and when I'm doing it. So get to know your own process so you can be curious internally about yourself. And if you're telling other people what they should do and it's relating to time, be curious of the advice you're giving other people, because it's probably really darn good advice that you should be listening to, that you could listen to and take advantage of. And one of the reasons why it's easy to give advice is because we don't have to be emotionally uncomfortable. We don't have to do, so if someone says, well, you need to walk a mile every day, that person isn't going to have to go through the uncomfortable feeling of not enjoying that mile while they're unfit. So it's easy to tell someone else that they should do it, because their body can come up with really great ideas, because they're not going to have to actually suffer the consequences, if you like, of that transition or the change. So it's worth listening to the advice you give other people, because often that's exactly the advice you need to take, but give yourself the support you need so that you don't feel uncomfortable about the transition or the change. So trust your own process, know how you do time. I'm going to ask you some questions in a minute all about time, and we're going to finish with that today. And the why is you matter, and the story that you tell yourself will determine how you feel about time. So I want you to be thinking about the story. You know, is your story all about the past tense? Is your story all about what you haven't got? Is it scarcity? Is it about what you wish you had? So think about the story you tell yourself. Does your story include you? Are you thinking about working, learning and living? One of the things that I see people do all the time, a lot of the time, most of the time, is they make decisions just for work. Their subconscious knows if you work all of those hours, then you're not going to have time to eat well or exercise. You're not going to have time for the family. You don't have time for the things that you enjoy doing. And so you will sabotage yourself on a subconscious level because you haven't made the decision inclusive of all of it. So you matter. So make sure when you're making decisions, when you're considering how you want to use your time, the story that you're telling yourself, is it beneficial to you personally? You can be a really caring person, a great mother, a great boss, want to work with other people on a really good level, but if you don't include yourself, your brain and system will shut it down. It will stop it from happening, because it needs to know at all times that you're safe and you're okay. It's hardwired to protect you. So make sure whatever plans you're doing, you're including work success, home success, and you personally. Make sure it's holistically all of that. And the other thing is, when you're thinking about planning, is thinking about the time frames. Some people will be naturally very detailed, and you'll get into the detail and minuteness of what has to happen today, but the actual ability to look ahead will be more difficult. But if you only make decisions today, so let's say, for example, I made a decision to eat chocolate because it tastes nice today and I have it now, but the consequences long term are that I'm going to be overweight, unhealthy, have a bad heart, could die early. If I don't consider both time frames, both the future and the consequences of the decision right now, then it won't work. And the subconscious brain, again, knows that. So you'll be making decisions with guilt in mind. So if I know I'm having a chocolate today, but I know I'm not going to have it again for another, 5 days, then I also know that it's okay, that it is being done in moderation. So it's about thinking about, I call it depth. So the breadth of your decisions include work, home, and you personally. And the depth of your decisions needs to include both the present and the future, and that could be in your lifetime, it could be in a year, it could be 90 days, and each one of you will have different time profiles, and the way you see and perceive time will impact whether or not you can plan effectively and when you can make really good decisions that work for you in this moment right now. And all sorts of reasons impact our ability to perceive and see and experience time. Sometimes it is trauma, as I said, the brain has shut down and said, oh, last time you did this, it hurt you, so I'm going to block it off. But it's like having bits of the movie edited. So you take the painful bits out so you don't revisit it, but then you're missing the sequence and you can't move yourself through a process. Sometimes it just be that you're naturally hardwired that way. That's just the way your brain processes information. Some people see things very linear, very logical minded. Other people are very chaotic. All their ideas are all over the place. And we actually need a bit of both. We need a bit of both in order to make decisions, because time is not linear. It has this amorphous ability to be all around us in all sorts of shapes and sizes. So for the month of November, we're very pleased to say, Gavin, I've mapped out what I'm going to be talking about. So today was an overview, just to get you sort of thinking about time models. I'm going to ask you some questions, and I'd like to have your questions from you in a moment. Next week, we're going to talk about diary space and actual diaries. I'd really love it if you could bring to the call next week, or during this week, could you put photographs of your diary, the page of it and the size of it, because the size of your diary, believe it or not, can impact your critic and can prevent you from having clarity and confidence. And I have seen it so many times when I work with people in the do, delegate or ditch process, when we're looking at their planning and their decision making and time management strategy. The size of their diary, believe it or not, can cause overwhelm. So please give me copies of your diary for that week. 17th of November, we're going to be looking at your office space, your home space, your physical environment, the space that you're giving yourself around can actually impact your perception of time. And then that can also make you feel closed in. It can make you feel, sometimes you need to be closed in to focus, to do your really sort of minute detail stuff. And maybe other times you do more creative thinking, you might need bigger spaces. So we're going to look at space and how that impacts your perceptions of time. And then on the 23rd of November, we're going to be looking at planning. And that's when we're going to look more at your time models. You know, where do you spatially hold information for past, present and future, and how could that be impacting your decision making and your planning strategies? And ultimately that's so you can get to be able to do more of what you love. So, and then on the 30th of November, we're going to have a summary and a celebration of what we've learned about time in the month of November. So I'm hoping that's the kind of thing you want to do. Any questions about time, let me know now. And while you're thinking about your questions, I'm just going to ask you to think about now this question, if you were managing time at your best, time would be like what? And I'd love to have your answers below. And when you're managing time like that, you are like what? What kind of you is that you when you're managing time at its best? And for you to be like that, what kind of resourceful support might you need? And when I say resourceful support, it could be a visual reminder, an auditory trigger, it could be physical help from people, friends and family, it could be from this group, it could be from me, or maybe resourceful support you need from yourself. I see lots of people struggling with their time management because they still can't find the planning tool, the diary, the online resource that fits with the way that their brain works. And actually the biggest challenge there is they don't actually know how their brain works. So if you don't know how your brain is perceiving time and what it does or doesn't need, then you'll keep finding things, but it's like keep trying on loads of clothes to see if they fit or not without knowing what size you are. So it's like you'd be putting on loads of size 8s and keep putting this, in my case, getting one arm in and thinking I can't fit it, or keep getting size 28s and thinking these are all too big. But if actually you knew what size you were, you knew what shape suited you, you knew how your brain worked, then you'd be able to collect the resources that help you. You'd understand why you have to write some things down, and then you can put some things on the computer and which things can or can't go on the computer for the way that you process time and the way that you plan and manage. Hope that's been useful. I can't see any other comments, so I look forward to this discussion carrying on in the group. Please do ask each other questions throughout the week. I look forward to hearing what you find out about time. And if you are interested in finding out Do, Delegate or Ditch, we're doing mastermind at the moment, running it. We're on week 2 on Tuesday. The next mastermind will be starting the first week in February, and I am running a retreat here on the 11th and 12th of November. So that's this month. We've got 2 spaces left. If anyone wants to join us on the 11th or 12th, you'd be very welcome to come and see me. If this is something that's of interest of you and you're thinking, do you know what, I really want to be able to manage my head space and my time, and I want to be able to work and learn and live at my best, then do let me know and I'll get you signed up on the waiting list, because there are limited numbers for both programs. Lots of love to you all. I'm just going to read your comments before I go. Gavin, time is like the sea. There is more of it than I could ever need, so I can never run out of it. Beautiful, beautiful metaphor. I'd be like a swimmer in that sea, sometimes swimming furiously and sometimes just bobbing along. So just think about then, for it to be sea and it's endless, and for you to be a swimmer like that, is there any other kind of resource or support you might need to be bobbing along like that? And what's interesting for me, Gavin, I'm really glad you shared it, because I am a sea swimmer, a really confident swimmer, and yet when you give that metaphor, I could feel the critic coming up for me personally. So anybody else, I just want you to think about who's different to Gavin. Share your experiences. In fact, I'm going to take 2 minutes just think about it for myself, where I am, because it's actually caused a bit of a, oh gosh, you know, if I thought about time as this big ocean, the first thing that comes is I'm drowning. That's the first kind of reaction that I have to it. So I'm really glad that works for you. I'm just kind of assimilating the impact it has on me. So I think when time, I don't know actually. I'm on T now, take my own advice. So I think I'm going to need to do some processing on this, and I'm going to have to work out what my time profile is, because I think it's actually changed a lot. Before, when I first started this 5 years ago, it was a bit like a train track. It was just steady chung 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 chung, because that gave me some safety. And so for me, actually, that's probably still the same. I've got structure. There's big spaces of time where I can go out, and it's more countryside. It's because it's really solid ground. That's what it is to do with. The water doesn't feel solid enough for me personally. So for me, time is like a beautiful scenery. So I can stand on the cliff. I have to be on the cliff looking at that amount to sea. In fact, that's where I'm going tomorrow to do I'm investing in myself for the day. I'm doing a quest day with Mary Lennon tomorrow in Cornwall. And the reason I'm going there is because she wrote a blog about how you stand on the cliffs and you know the other side of the ocean is America, and the other side this way is Ireland. And I liked the idea of having that immense amount of space. We look out at the sea here, and I see the Isle of Wight, so it kind of, the view is blocked a bit. So I like the idea of the sea as long as I'm not in it, because I've never really liked the fact that you never know what's underneath. It's the not knowing what's underneath. I don't like it. So for me, time is it's very grounded, but there's an immense opening. I can see for miles and miles, and that's probably why I like going to Spain as well, because that's where the mountains give us this big higher perspective, and the viewpoint that we get from that. So a massive thank you, Kevin. I think we need to remember that we all float naturally, but forget about that and panic. So I'm going to leave you with the thought, Gavin, because what I'm reading, I think we need to remember that we all float. Is what I infer from that is that you have a perception or a belief that we all do that. And I would ask you just to encourage you to think that that's how you do it. And that's the word and language that you're using to describe it. However, that isn't my map of the world. I don't do float. I'd like to maybe float along, flow. But I still have to touch ground. I still have to. It's even if I look at being, one of my metaphors for me working my best is like a ballerina. So I'm elegant and I'm flowing, and I've got flexibility and I have strength, but I still require my feet on the ground. That's how, for me, for time to be at its best, I have to be really grounded. I have to be able to really enjoy the moment, but for me to enjoy the moment, I have to have given the future some thought, and I have to reflect it on the past. But the actual, when time is at its best for me, when I'm managing time, it means I'm really grounded and I'm really here, and I really feel like my feet are touching base with Mother Nature, and all the strength and all the source of the earth is coming up through me. Whereas when I'm in, and yeah, water's interesting. Water's got a really strong element, I know, for spirit. And maybe I'm just in my temple energy right now, and I'm being very grounded with what I'm doing and the way I'm working. And maybe you're much more in tune with spirit and water. And that's just where we all are. So I think that's the lovely, thank you for that discussion. It's brilliant to have those engagements and to see different perspectives. And what I'd really like to do now is encourage everybody else to share their perspectives, and let's get that curiosity going. Let's be curious about how we all perceive time, and then think about it. If you see the world as, time as being an ocean, and you're floating or all bobbing along, and we forget about that and we sort of panic, but somebody else who's in water would panic. If we were managing them, or we're coaching them as with our clients, or we're parenting them, or we live with them, and we talk in this kind of language, maybe it'll make sense of why their critic goes off and when they panic. And that's why using their language and listening to the way they see and hear the world is really important. And that's why non-judgmental listening is the thing that I'm striving for to get out to the world. Thank you, everybody. Fab Friday. I'll put some pictures in about Cornwall when I'm there tomorrow, so you can hear all about it. Mark's coming with me to photograph it all for us so we can capture it and I can write about it. Speak soon. Thanks for joining me today, guys. See you soon.